Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 1 to 4 player game, Burgle Bros 2, The Casino Capers, designed by Tim Fowers and Jeff Krause, and published by Fowers Games, who helped sponsor this video. After pulling off a successful high-security heist in the first Burgle Bros, your team is back and at it again, looking for a new challenge. And I think you might have found it, because this time you're planning to take down a string of casinos. Will you and your team be able to pull this off in the light of day with tightened security and a near impossible to crack safe? You'd better hope so, or your criminal career is going to be cut very short. So join me at the table and let's learn how to play. To set up, open the game box and pull out all the components because we're going to be using the box itself to play on. In the corners, insert the 4 legs, ensuring they're tilted outward. And they'll fit snugly in but can be easily pulled out afterwards as well. Now lay one of the playmats down on the table and set the box over it like this, putting the other playmat on top. Now this gives you a very striking visual representation of the 2 floors of the casino that you're breaking into. But I'm shooting a video here, and I want to give you a variety of different examples, and that means having to move the camera around so you can see things clearly. And to help with that, I'm just going to break the casino down by removing the legs. And you can also play flat on the table like this if you want to. So this is still very clearly the first floor, and then this over here is the second floor. Now look through the tiles and set aside the ones labeled as the owner's office, safe, monorails, and escalators, with the rest shuffled and set face down. You'll take the owner's office and 1 monorail and escalator along with 13 other random tiles and shuffle them together, dealing them face down onto the first floor so it looks something like this when you're done. Then shuffle the remaining tiles together and do the same thing, placing those tiles on the second floor until it's filled in. Now collect these wall pieces and put 8 on each floor in a random arrangement between the tiles, ensuring that you never close off any tiles completely. You can think of the entire outside of the floor as having walls, so I couldn't place the pieces like this because that would completely close these 3 tiles in. You'll want to spread the walls out as you arrange them, and it should look something like this when you're all done. These are the pool and lounge event decks, which you shuffle into 2 face-down piles based on their backs. And then you set out the dice, the heat and counting cubes, and other tokens. And I'm organizing these into some game trays I have, and if you'd like to get some of your own, you'll find links in the description below. Next, take these chips, and if you have 1 or 2 players, remove the one labeled as Saleswoman. In this video, we'll assume we have 2 players. But if you had 3 or 4 players instead, you remove 1 randomly, unseen. Either way, you then mix the rest of them up face down. These are the patrol cards, and you separate them into 2 face-down decks based on their floor values here. So a deck for floor 1 and a deck for floor 2. You then refer to this included chart, and if you're playing a campaign, which we'll discuss in more detail later, you'll now add a certain number of these distracted cards and or remove a certain number of patrol cards from the patrol decks as indicated by your current position here on this suspicion meter. You begin the campaign at level 6, which says to add 1 distracted card to the first floor patrol deck, which I'm going to shuffle in right now. After shuffling both decks separately, you then place them by their related floor. Now draw and discard 1 patrol card from the first floor deck, and this will show a depiction of the first floor grid. So this square here represents this spot, and this square is this one here. You'll notice that some of the different squares have a dot in the center. And on each of those matching tiles, you'll place 1 face-down chip. You also put one of these bouncer figures into the space that shows a letter and number combo. With this patrol resolved, you now flip over a new one, but only pay attention to the space marked with a letter and number combo and set one of these destination tokens into it. Now do the exact same thing on the second floor, but use 2 cards from its deck. If you happen to draw a distracted card during these steps, just draw a replacement and then shuffle the distracted cards back into the deck. Now, depending on the number of players you have, each person controls a certain number of the characters. If you have 3 or more players, each person controls 1 each. If you have 1 or 2 players, they can divide anywhere from 2 to 4 characters among themselves. In this video, we'll give our 2 players 1 character each. Players pick their character from the variety of options, collecting its matching card. figure, and 3 pieces of gear, which will show their character's image in this corner. You stack your gear behind the related character with just their titles showing, though you can examine these at any time. Now find the large Heist Finales envelope. If you're playing the campaign mode as we're doing here, remove the finale labeled as Heist 1 and set it in the nearby play area, but don't read its other side. If you've finished the campaign, or just don't want to play the campaign at all, there are rules for setting up to play standalone games which are explained here on page 3 of the rulebook. But otherwise, the game is played the exact same. And here we will assume we're playing the first heist of a campaign. Now the players pick any 2 corner tiles as the entrances and set an entrance token on each one. And that's the setup. In Burgle Bros 2, players will be working together to make their way through a casino, avoid security, find the safe, crack its code, and make off with the loot. The game is played over a series of turns, starting with any one player and then going clockwise around and around the table. And at the end of each character's turn, the bouncer on the same floor as that character will take a turn. So it goes character turn, bouncer, next character's turn, bouncer, and so on. But on the very first turn each character takes, you have one other consideration. You must pick which of the 2 entrances your character will begin on, setting their piece there, and flipping the tile at that location face up if it isn't already. Once it's flipped, check for any text here at the top, and if it begins with "when you enter," immediately resolve what it says. For example, here we're told to add 1 cube. So we place one of these orange counting cubes in one of the spaces for them here on the tile. After entering the casino, you take your turn as normal, and on a turn, you perform up to 4 actions. These can be the same or different ones, and you can perform fewer than 4 if you want. You'll find the different actions listed on the back of any one character card, so if you want a reminder, maybe just grab one of the characters that you're not using. And let's go through each of these actions, starting with moving. This is very simple. You just move your character from the tile it is on to an adjacent one. And an adjacent tile is any that is touching on a full side. So that means you can't move diagonally. And if there's a wall between 2 tiles, those are not considered adjacent. So in this case, I could only move here. If the space you enter has a face-down chip token, reveal it by flipping it face up and resolving its effect. This, for example, is a crowd, and it can help you hide from a bouncer that enters that space. There are 6 different types of chips you may encounter, and we won't go through each one in this video, but you'll find them all explained here in the rulebook if you have any questions. And how they work will make perfect sense once you've finished this video. Sometimes the effect of a revealed chip will move you to a new tile immediately, but assuming it doesn't, you then reveal the tile in your space if it's face down. And again, if this has a "when you enter" effect, like we see here, you follow its instructions. And you follow that effect anytime a player-controlled character enters that tile. In this case, we're told to add a counting cube. Tiles may have instructions you need to follow at other times as well. For example, this one says, when you try to leave, you must first roll a die. And if you get less than the number of cubes on the tile, you still spend the action, but you don't move anywhere. We won't go through every tile effect in the game, as again, you'll find them all explained here at the back of the rulebook if you have any questions. But there are a couple that we should look at. This is the Escalator, and it has a "while here" effect. As an action, during your turn, you can perform the "while here" effect of the tile you're on. And in this case, you're told to jump to the tile on the other floor that's in the same row and column. Escalators and other effects may tell you to jump to a specific tile. If so, you just pick up the related figure and place it there, ignoring any walls, tiles, or figures in between. However, you still reveal and resolve any chips at that new location, and reveal and resolve the tile if it's face down, unless you're told otherwise. And in this case, the escalator is one of the ways you'll be able to travel from one floor to another. Once both monorails have been revealed, and there'll be one on each floor, you can use its "while here" action to jump from one monorail to the other. And while we're discussing movement, I should mention, if you ever move into a tile that contains a bouncer, you immediately collect 2 heat cubes from the supply and put them on that character's card. Heat is bad. It represents how closely you're being watched by security, and if a character ever has 6 or more heat, you've been busted, and all the players immediately lose. And that's the move action. So now let's take a look at the peek action. Here you pick any adjacent face-down tile, which means it can't be on the other side of a wall, and then you reveal any chip and tile that is there. They aren't resolved, but now you know what's there if you decide to move to that space later. So we've covered moving, peeking, and resolving a while here action. The last one we have to go over is prepping a gear card, but you can only perform this action once per turn. You simply take any one of the gear cards behind your character and place it face up in front of you. It's now prepared to use. Although you can only prep one piece of gear per turn, you can have several prepped at the same time over the course of multiple turns. Now, gear is helpful because at any time, either during your turn, another player's turn, and even the bouncer's turn, you can resolve the effective gear you have prepped. And if you're ever unsure about when you can use gear, the rules say to go with whatever is most helpful to the players. Oh, and if you use gear during a bouncer's turn and its effect refers to the current player, that means whichever character went last. The gear's effect will be written here, and it will indicate how many times it can be used. Here it says 2 times, and each time you use gear, add one of these counting cubes to it. And once you've used the gear as many times as its maximum, you remove any cubes there and flip it over. This will show a new action that you can perform, but this one must be resolved during your turn, and it costs one of your actions. And once the flipped ability has been used, you remove that gear from the game. Okay, so we've covered the actions you can take, but why are you taking them? Well, somewhere in this casino on the second floor is a safe, and you need to locate it and crack it. But to crack it, you'll need to find the owner's office on the first floor. Now, we'll go over how all that works, but keep in mind there are bouncers roaming this casino, and they want to stop you. After a character has finished their turn, the bouncer on the same floor as them will now take its turn. To do this, you move the bouncer 3 spaces towards its current destination, which is the tile on their floor that's marked by this token. And they will always take the shortest path. So in this case, it's very simple. The bouncer would go 1, 2, 3. Now, if there had been 2 equally short paths, the bouncer will take the one that moves them clockwise. To illustrate this, let me move the destination token to this tile. Now the bouncer is 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces away in this direction, and 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces away in this direction. You can think of this as one big loop. So the bouncer would go 3 spaces in this direction because this is clockwise. Unlike the player's characters, bouncers do not reveal tiles as they move, and they ignore chips. They also ignore text on face-up tiles, except for ones with brown banners. These have effects that trigger when the bouncer enters them, so resolve them, and then if the bouncer has any movement left, it will continue moving after. Bouncers also don't stop when they enter a tile with a player's character. If they have movement left, they'll continue. But when they enter the space, any characters there will receive 2 heat cubes, and then they continue. During its move, if the bouncer reaches its destination, discard a new patrol card from that floor and then move the destination token to the numbered spot that it shows. And if the bouncer has any movement left, it will continue towards this new destination. And remember, if there are equal paths to the destination, it will continue traveling in a clockwise direction. Now, when you're relocating the destination token, if you ever draw one of these distracted cards, you instead get to pick any tile on that floor that has an even number in its corner here and move the token there. If there are no tiles with even numbers, just draw another patrol card. And if the patrol deck ever runs out when you would need to draw, the bouncer is now considered to be hunting. To show this, you remove the destination token from that floor, and now when moving, the bouncer instead goes 3 spaces towards the nearest character. If there are several characters equally close, the players pick which one the bouncer will target. And if the bouncer enters a character's space, every character gains 2 heat as usual, but then the bouncer stops moving. Likewise, if the bouncer starts its turn on a space with a character, that character gains 2 heat, but the bouncer doesn't move. It is possible for a destination marker to be returned to the board by another effect, and if that happens, you place the token where you're told, and then the bouncer goes back to its old movement habits. And once the token is reached, it's removed and the bouncer goes back to hunting. Now I should mention, any effects that would make you change or swap a destination token will have no effect if one of these tokens is no longer on the floor. Okay, so that's how a bouncer's turn works. and after they move as required, the next player in clockwise order goes. But there is one more rule we should cover with bouncers. Sometimes they'll get alerted by a commotion. If an effect causes one, for example, if you end your turn on the courtroom tile, as indicated here, it says a commotion occurs. And then you immediately move that floor's destination token from wherever it is over here to where the commotion is happening. You even move the destination token here if it had previously been off the board. Then either way, with the token moved, the bouncer moves one space towards it, resolving any heat if necessary. Now, when the bouncer eventually reaches the spot where the commotion occurred, you draw a new patrol card as usual, moving the destination token to the indicated space. Or if there are no patrol cards left to draw, you just remove the token again and the bouncer goes on the hunt. Bouncers only care about the latest commotion, so if they haven't reached an old one by the time a new one is created, the token still moves and they target the new location instead. Also, if a commotion would ever occur on a tile where the bouncer already is, you just ignore the commotion entirely. Okay, so now we understand player and bouncer turns. Now let's figure out how to use our turns to crack the safe and win. One of the most common chips you'll reveal are moles, and while you're on a tile with a mole chip, you can spend 2 actions to discard it, and then you get to place one of these safe dice on the owner's office, which is located somewhere on the first floor. Now, if it hasn't been revealed yet, you instead leave the die on the tile where the mole was located, and once the office is revealed, you then move all the dice on any other tiles to it, including any that might be on the second floor. And also note, the values on the dice do not matter at this time. While a character is on the owner's office space, you can spend 1 action to move 1 die from there to the safe on the second floor, assuming it's been revealed. So just to be clear, if there were 3 dice here, this character could spend 3 actions to move all of them to the safe, but they could also spend fewer actions to move fewer dice. A character on the safe's tile can then spend 1 action to roll all of the dice there, and any dice that match the numbers in the bottom left-hand corners of any of the tiles in the same row and column as the safe will add one of these cracked tokens to cover up those values. In this case, we rolled a 3, and there are 2 3s, but that single die roll will cover both of them up. Covering these values represents cracking the safe's combination. And even though these numbers are covered up, the tiles still count as having this value for other effects that refer to them. After resolving the roll, return the dice back to the safe, and then move 1 die from there back to the owner's office. And keep in mind, if you have an action left with your character here and at least 1 die remains on the safe, you could take that action again to try to crack even more tiles. But just make sure each time after you roll the dice, you return 1 back to the owner's office. As we've been doing here, you can start cracking numbers on the tiles of the same row and column as the safe before all of those tiles have been revealed. But if you later reveal a number that was previously cracked, it isn't automatically covered over. Here we have a 6. And we previously cracked the 6 over here. So to cover this one up, we're going to have to roll another 6 again. So sometimes it can be advantageous to try to reveal as many tiles as possible before you start cracking the safe. Once all the tiles in the same row and column as the safe have been revealed and cracked, you've broken into the safe. But it's not over yet. Now it's time to move on to the finale. You flip over the finale card for your heist, and it will describe any necessary adjustments you need to make and special rules to follow. Now, I'm not going to spoil this for you, but many finales will require moving to a specific exit tile. If you move on to an exit tile while meeting any necessary requirements, you automatically exit and it doesn't cost you an extra action. After a turn where a character exits, the bouncer on that floor has its turn skipped. An exited character won't perform any more actions, but can still activate any prepped gear it has. Now, if you complete all the requirements listed on the back of the finale, you win. But if any character gains 6 or more heat before that happens, you all lose. When the game ends, you'll fill out the appropriate line for the heist you just completed. And if you won, you'll add 1 to your current suspicion level, but if you lost, you'll subtract 1. However, your suspicion level cannot go above 10 or below 1. If you won, you'll also gain additional perks that come from this envelope that will carry over into your next heist, but those I'd like for you to be able to discover as you play. So to learn about that when the time comes, just check the information here on page 13. There's also a Dead Drops variant you'll find on the back of the rulebook, which you can play with using these included cards to help increase the difficulty if you want. But again, that I'll leave for you to discover on your own. And keep in mind, the campaign is very flexible. You can play with the same people throughout, or add, remove, or change players during the campaign. Or just ignore the campaign entirely and play one-off games using random finales as described on page 3. But otherwise, that's how you play Burgle Bros 2, the Casino Capers. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. But until next time, thanks for watching.